This is still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the NTA. Let's now listen to excerpts from our first conversation on the legislature in Nigeria 64 years after independence, as compiled by Oyeyemi Ajayi.
The legislature is doing very well. The first law always is the budget, the Appropriation Act. And that is what the executive has to implement. And every year, the legislature has not failed in carrying out that responsibility. In fact, in the last 5-6 years, it has always done it in such a way that the country has been returned to a January to December budgetary year, such that you could do effective economic planning, businesses, and all of that.
Talk while I was in the assembly. And a number of lawmakers told me, went out to do primaries, and then people tell you, we don't care whatever you are doing there. We just want you to, share money to us and all that. You don't go there and be speaking grammar. What we are interested in is what comes to us. That's why I'm talking about, is it about legislative infrastructure or is about stomach infrastructure? So I think we need a very serious public education for our electorate to understand that the calling of a member, the calling of a lawmaker is not just to come, it's not to come and then get money at all costs and then cheer around and all that. But so let people understand what is lawmaking.
The economic challenge we have today, the way that the economy of this country has descended into, the collapse of the currency is found on the doorsteps of the legislature. Yes, because if the legislature, not the present executive, not the present set of the legislature, is consistent legislature, it is a consistent failure of the National Assembly to find out the level of implementation of the budget. It is the failure of the legislature to find out the activities of the central bank. It is the current state of it is the failure of the legislature to hold the NNPC to account. Quantum of production, how much have we released for our refineries? To what extent has those refineries gone working? Now, NNPC has descended to just negotiating market price of crude, of Dangote. They have forgotten that they gave money for refineries to be revamped and so on and so on. And the legislature, when it's faced like this, Nigerians should stand up. I believe that we should. The people should stand up, and the legislature should stand up and question the NNPC.
But then, of course, by the time the legislature continues to behave in a manner that is funny, not doing what it's supposed to do, any bill that is dumped by the executive is given expeditious, passage without going through the necessary protocols of legislation. I think that's what Nigerians should be worried about, not when there is peace. And I'm worried when the legislature begins to sing the praises of a sitting president or a sitting governor. It sends jitters in the minds of a lot of people because ideally, people expect confrontation. I don't expect I expect that there should be collaboration, but every
Collaboration, not confrontation.
Fine. Collaboration, not confrontation. Every arm of government must get its own constitution. Look, it is the constitution that assigns rules and responsibilities to every organ, every level of government.
I'm sure you must have, had a feel of what we had to go through yesterday. It was quite a robust conversation, and the issues that were unresolved or left, unresolved, we will attempt to do that in this episode, and that's why I'm very glad to, of course, be introducing our guests. But before that, let me thank Oyeyemi Ajayi for compiling that excerpt for us. So, Dr. Abdurrahman Abu Hamisu is a political scientist and public affairs analyst, one of the new faces today, but of course a familiar face on Good Morning Nigeria. Dr. Hamisu, thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you
Or
for
joining
having me.
us,
Good
rather.
morning, Nigerians.
And I didn't call you Hamisu Rogo today. All right. We also have here, sorry?
Rogo at large.
Rogo at large. We also have here Chairman House of Representatives Committee on Rules and Business and member representing Uele North and South Udu Federal Constituency, Ejirogene Francis Waive. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us again.
Thank you. Thank you.
Also joining us from Jos is Dr. Abel Daniel Ochibo. He was with us yesterday. He's the former Deputy Clerk, Administration, House of Representatives, National Assembly, and President, CEO, Creativity Management Consultant. Dr. Ochibo, you are welcome once again.
Very much, and good morning.
Via Zoom, joining us via Zoom is Senator Kairat Guadabe. She was a senator in the 4th National Assembly. Senator Guadabe, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria. Good to have you.
Thank you very much. Good morning.
All right. So let's kick off from
Yes,
where we started yesterday.
I think we should start with the new faces today.
All right.
Yes,
Okay.
so that let's have their perspectives before
Okay,
we
go
go.
ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Let me start with Senator Irat, who is joining us via Zoom. Senator Irat, thank you very much for joining our conversation. Let's hear your thoughts about the quality of our legislature briefly, and what you think, how you think it has evolved, in the past 64 years.
All right. Thank you very much. 64 years is indeed, good morning, Nigerians. 64 years is indeed a lifetime. And things evolved within a lifetime. To start with, in the early 60s, when we had a parliamentary system of government, the setup at the legislative level was quite if I may like to recall, we had two different chambers. We had the main parliament, and then you also had the House of Chiefs. Now, both were part of decision-making and legislating for the country. The quality varies according to which chambers you are looking at that time. At that time, the issues before for contemplation for members were mostly issues of independence, issues of self-governance. So the quality of debate was quite robust because the issues before the parliamentarians and was also nation building. So you had that kind of assembly at the time. By the time you come down to 1979, the quality was quite different because the system that was used was a presidential system, which portended a different kind of mode of election into the chambers. And when the members that came were quite energized, and their ethos was equally different. This time, the members that came wanted to come back to restore democracy wholeheartedly. And their energy, their robust discussions was mostly for nation building under the banners of their respective parties. So that's what we had then. Then, fast forward to 83, the same pertained and continued. However, it was truncated. And if you recall, the current president was senator under the 83. So we cannot really say too much about the 83's style of government. After that, we had a very long course of 99. This time round, it was a rebirth of democracy again. Hence, the mindset and of the legislators that came was largely, how do we make sure that democracy survives? How do we establish it? And in establishing it, they were they were torn between instilling and ensuring institutional strength for all institutions, particularly the legislative institution that we all belonged to at that time. As a result, the level of discussion was really robust on ensuring that you secure independence of the legislature from the executive arm of government. And as that went on, you would notice that there was a lot of tussle because the executive didn't want a completely independent, a largely independent legislature. So that's why you kept having changes in its leadership, both in the House and in the Senate. Hence, you found that at that time, the Senate and the House, both arms, were bent on saying, we're learning, and also bent on ensuring that they had robust discussions on critical issues that had to do with the country, because that's the beginning. It was fresh coming out of the military regime, and it was important to set a good pattern. However, if only that was allowed to continue, the system would have stabilized better and evolved to a stronger, more independent, more robust discussions on issues rather than what we find today. Largely, it didn't sustain because the executive ensured that more than 75% of the legislature did not return to the assembly at that time. And so we lost a crop of those who could have helped to continue to put those structures in place. When the other, the different, that was the fourth assembly. So you had the fifth assembly who was grappling to retain that same ethos that you saw in the fourth assembly, and with a lot of difficulties because they too were grappling with this independence issue. Even though there's always an overlap, we say all institutions should be independent, but of course there are areas of overlap. The areas of overlap should not completely overlap any institution that it almost loses its independence. That's what I'm saying here. Now, so gradually we have moved from struggle to institute strong institution in the legislature to ensure laws are made for the good governance of Nigerians, which is the basic reason the legislative arm is established. Today, we've moved to a situation where the legislature is competing with establishing part of the duties of the executive in their respective constituency, which doesn't really, it misleads the public, and the public is largely misled, and they keep making that same demand for the executive arm's responsibility to be brought to them. So as a result, it erodes largely the responsibilities and the strength of the assembly from their natural responsibility, which is to make laws for the good governance of the country. And that's what I'm seeing today, that largely we're moving away from what we're supposed to be doing, and we should try and pull back to that level. Otherwise, we're three legs. The tripod may be shaky and we may not stand strong for the country.
All right, thank you so much, Senator Gwadabe, for your opening remarks there, and she has raised a lot of issues.
Another band of issues.
Yes, not too far from what we discussed yesterday. The issue of continuity, of the members, having been swept away after maybe about 2 terms, and also, the executive and the legislative arm of government clashing, in their respective duties. Let me come to Dr. Amisu. You were not here yesterday, so let's have your own perspective on this issue, because a lot of people say that the legislature, they expect more from the legislature than we already getting. So what do you think actually are the challenges?
Well, thank you for your question. You see, in every society, what drives conversation and the action people are likely to take is interest. And the beauty of democracy is about aggregation of interest. Now, when you have a misalignment of interest, then it becomes a problem. What do I mean by that? If the first responsibility is to protect public interest, and you choose private interest, then there will be a problem. Because the pursuit of private interest in public spaces becomes what we normally call abuse, corruption, and so on and so forth. So the clash in Nigeria over time is the clash between public interest and private interest.
Okay.
And so people go to office with the promise to protect private interest, public interest, rather. But because they are not insulated from the society, you find them pursuing rather private interest to stay afloat in order to serve public interest. So what the speaker yesterday referred to as public infrastructure has become part of our political culture, because everybody believes if you are going into public office in Nigeria, you are going there to make money. So because you are going there to make money first before you serve us. So the bargain always is what is in there for us, because we are sure that you take care of yourself first before you take care of us by providing the needed public infrastructure like educational infrastructure, healthcare delivery, roads, and so on and so forth. So the first thing is, what do you have for us? So it is not out of place that all of those are happening. But I want to say something which is very critical. In other places that you see the legislature performing, it's not by the writing of constitution to say, okay, this is a constitution, you and I will do A, B, C, D, the other parties will do, just the way we have it in Nigeria. If you go to Europe and other places, legislature is a manifestation of struggles that have taken centuries. The parliament in Britain dates back to 875 AD.
Wow.
Yes. So before you come to 14th century, when there was Orange Revolution. And what was the revolution? The revolution was simple. I needed to clarify this background so that we can come to what is happening in Nigeria. When the monarchs became too powerful, and the poor persons, the entrepreneurs that have the ability to form companies, navigate all the continent in the world in search of what they can take back to Britain, were doing that. Because of the greed of the monarchs, they continue to tax these persons. And these persons have workers that they needed to pay. And they always enlighten their workers to say that, look, we can't pay more because we are paying tax. And these persons want more. And that led to a lot of debate, discussion, rioting, and so on and so forth. So what did the monarchs do? Okay, those of you that are going abroad, maybe we don't have information how the workings are, so can we start talking? This is the basis upon which Parliament was formed. So Parliament in almost European countries that you know is an aggregation of middle class. Those that are in between the poor people and the nobles who are wealthy.
So there is a middle class.
There is a middle class. And that is the concept of a middle class. Those that are in between the poor persons that are being employed and the wealthy, especially the royals. So these were the people that constituted Parliament. And it's supposed to act as a brake on the wheel of progress in terms of the
burden that is being imposed on them that they are in turn imposing on those at the lower cadre. So that Parliament is the conscience of the polity. Yeah, I align myself with my teacher, my mentor, Professor Mato, when he said that the Parliament needed to do a lot. And as Senator Kairat Godabi said, so that at the end of it all, it's not about lawmaking because their work is cut out. Lawmaking and then oversight. But for me, lawmaking is not even the problem. The most critical thing that we need is the oversight. So that questions are asked. You don't just present budget and then last year we gave you 8 billion and you didn't do anything with it. No anything tangible that anybody can point to. And we said because it's a government and government is a continuum, we give you 12 billion. So what have you done with the 8 billion? So, and that is where I'm coming to. You see, if democracy should fail today, I will not blame the executive. I will blame the legislature. Because all over the world, we know the way the executive work. And that is why even those that framed the 1999 Constitution, right, said we should have a parliament, not even at the federal level. And one of the mistakes we are making is we look at parliament from federal level. And nobody is talking about parliament at the state level. Nobody is talking about parliament at the local government level. You go to some local government in Nigeria, perpetually you don't even know when the councillors sit. They are there, they are taking their salaries, and then at the end of their 3 years tenure, now 4 years, then there is election and they go back or they don't go back. Now,
I guess with this local government autonomy. We're beginning to see some changes.
But the state has autonomy.
Well, we need, because don't even go there, because that has its own issue as well.
Yes.
You know, we all saw what happened yesterday at the National Assembly.
Yes.
Emotion was moved. But let's keep that, Demola, and bring in
Dr.
Ojigbo. Of course, who was with us here yesterday, Dr. Abel Daniel Ojigbo, former Deputy Clerk Administration, House of Representatives, of course, at the National Assembly. Senator Irat raised, critical issues about different ethos driving the discussions at the, different stages of the evolution of our legislature. And she mentioned particularly the ethos of nation building that drove, the First Assembly during the First Republic, and then down to, the Second, Third Republic, when, the ethos changed, and then it was, discussion aimed at securing independence of the legislature from the executive. But that has changed as it is now. What are your perspectives to the ethos that is driving the, current National Assembly?
Let's remind ourselves that the stipulation of the Constitution in Section 4, subsection 2, is that the National Assembly shall make laws for the peace, the order, the good government. And I believe that these are all part of the ethos, Such laws, as prescribed in the exclusive legislative list and so on. So the question to us is, have we lived up to expectation within the parameters of these stipulations? And I think that is where the real challenge is. Yes, I listened very passionately to the comments of Senator Gwadabi. And it's very clear, just like we said yesterday, that there is a gap somewhere. And yes, there are success areas, but I think there is a lot to still have done. From the legislature that, like I said yesterday, used to be seen, relatively speaking, as a very timid one, it's reinvented itself to some extent in certain ways, but then there is a lot to be done. And let me paint a comic conundrum here. each time we talk, and I said it yesterday, that part of the challenge, or the challenges that the National Assembly must live up to today, is that we must avoid the temptation of playing to the gallery. What's the comic conundrum I'm talking about? Of all the structures that we have each time we hear of public gallery, I think the one where people recognize so much is that of the National Assembly within the chambers. When the presiding officer sits, particularly in the House, he faces the gallery. That's the public gallery. We recognize the gallery for a number of reasons. That's where we keep our visitors when they come. Members of the public can sit there, watch proceedings. We keep important VIPs there and so on. But then, the main business of the legislature is within the hallowed chambers. We call it hallowed. It's so respected. But then, when you don't play to the chamber, you don't play to the plenary, the temptation is that you will soon start playing to the gallery. But the gallery is not your main business. So I think that is one big temptation. And the National Assembly must watch out for that. Secondly, the issue of sticking to our prescribed assignment, our roles and functions. Today, another great temptation is the fact that, and I think Senator Gwadabe tried to mention something close to that. The doctrine of separation of powers, engineered by the principle of checks and balances. Now, there are certain dispositions that we see sometimes that seem to run counter to this principle and this doctrine. And how do I mean? Like someone said, if two of you are the same, then one is unnecessary. And so the temptation by the legislature to always play into the arms of the executive must be watched and must be protected. You are carved out so that you can check the excesses of the other arms of government. And I think we must not, fail in that assignment. And now let me end up by talking about the public perception. Today, the public perception of the legislature is at a very low time ebb, and that should worry all of us. That is outside the fact that, like I said yesterday, most legislatures are held in contempt by the citizenry. And that is understandable because the collective will, the collective aspirations, and if you like, the frustrations of the people, normally they would like to see their lawmakers. Now, let me give you this example. Some years ago, I was somewhere in Nasarawa State to deliver a lecture. And the moment I was introduced as coming from the National Assembly, now you could feel some kind of palpable opprobrium right in the hall there. And I knew I was in trouble, except I moved to heal that mindset. I may not deliver any lecture. And I started by asking them, what do you think of the National Assembly? I mean, it was just an open-ended question. And come and hear the comments, the invectives, and all kinds of unpreachable descriptions of what the National Assembly was. In fact, one told me, say, we see you the same as all of them. And I made it something to laugh about, and everybody felt free. But at the end of the day, I asked them, I said, who is to blame? Who is to blame? And then that was where the solution came. And at the end of the day, we agreed that, yes, we were all in it. The Constitution gives you the power of recall. But have we succeeded in recalling anybody from the National Assembly, even if he or she was not doing well? A friend told me a story that they met somewhere and they knew someone who had signed to recall a member. And later on, they all reneged for whatever reasons. And he asked him, but your signature was there. He said, no. What you saw I signed there was I just signed to collect fertilizer. So, and if you remember yesterday, I said something that we're all in it. The citizenry, all of us talking at all time, most of the time, but we should make sure that we encourage the National Assembly to be what it is. We should not be adding our own baggage of issues to it. Otherwise, I think we are likely to descend into what I call a democratic legislative tailspin, but God forbid.
Opening remarks there. I mean, you have raised some issues as well, like Dr. Amisu did and Senator Guadabe. Now, I mean, we intentionally left you so that you could react to all the issues that have been raised, the issue of the misalignment of interest, which he talked about, the problem between the executive and the legislature, and so many other issues that have been raised today. And just like we said yesterday, it's just the issue of these oversight functions as well. So tell us exactly, you are still in the National Assembly. What exactly is the challenge?
Thank you very much. I got worried when my colleague here, Doctor, used the language that if we have any problem with our current democracy, the legislature is responsible.
Yes.
If you look at that statement, and the realities on ground, you know that that is not true.
Okay.
Take the selection process for legislators, for example. In the state assemblies, it is 100% determined by the state executive. And so you end up having no legislature at the state level. At council level, local government, there's no local government functioning in the country anyway. So it's both the failure of the executive and the legislature at the local government level. At the national level, in those days, those you want to get rid of from state local politics, you send to Abuja, so you facilitate their victory. And when they fall out of favor with you, you send them back in again, So at the end of the day, it's somebody somewhere pulling the string. So we don't get what we deserve, as it were. So these people that emerge through such processes, what would you expect from that? But having said that, I know that there are many, particularly those of us who came from backgrounds that are not aligned with the party in power in your state. You were able to come out independently, as it were. So there are many who are noble men in the National Assembly and in other legislatures across the country. In the current 10th Assembly, you'll find retired generals, professors, lawyers, doctors, architects, accountants, and then you find the young people too who are very zealous for our country. So, but to use one brush, to just look at everybody and say, oh, everybody in the National Assembly is not serious, is after stomach infrastructure and all of that. It's not right. Then you must also look at the costs of our electionary campaigns, the cost of getting elected. Many of us got involved in politics and ran elections to contribute to change in our country. But if you look at what you go through to emerge, the expenditure, now by the time you come out, many people are faced with debts in hundreds of millions of naira. And you begin to think of how are you going to settle that? If you're a man of conscience, you want to live within your means. And if you are very sanctimonious, you want to take an exit immediately. This is not a place for you because you now need to spend that, because before you pay a quarter of that, your debt, another election is here. And you have to go, it's a circle. And you find that, for me, for instance, before I got into the National Assembly, I'm not sure I was owing anybody 1,000 naira. But today I'm sure my debts are in hundreds of millions. And it continues in that way. We must try to change that system of making our elections so expensive. This justification of we won't see you again after the election, so we are taking our own. We should educate our people that is not good for our country. It's not good for our democracy. If we justify it and so that's why they are taking it, let them take it, then we'll remain in this circle and our country will never move forward. But having said that, you look at the quality of the National Assembly, particularly in this republic. I think one of the major problems we have today, people compare what happened in the 8th Assembly with the 9th and 10th. In the 8th Assembly, we had a situation where a different political party ran the legislature, and then Mr. President was from another party. And there was this acrimony, there was this continual fighting, this continuous bickering. And most people began to think that that's what the legislature should be. Man, keep fighting, keep fighting. So when in the 9th Assembly, that tempo was not there.
There was collaboration and all that.
There was collaboration, and people began to think, this is not like what we expect. This is what you fight now. In fact, I was, in the 9th Assembly, I was in a TV interview like this, and somebody asked me, not on NTA, another channel, another television station, he said, why are you people not fighting? That's what makes it exciting. That's what makes news. You people should be fighting with the president, you know. But if you look at what happened in the 8th Assembly, this country never had budgets for periods of up to 6 months.
Yeah.
And then we were only paying salaries. You couldn't run capital projects. The country suffered. Businesses suffered and all of that. So that began to change in the 9th Assembly. And in the 10th Assembly, we have decided as a body that what we want to do is to objectively look at what is coming from the executive. And many of those things we do, they don't make news. It is the one that bad news is what makes news to most people. Just before we went on recess, for instance, the executive had asked for 15%, an upward review of Ways and Means to 15%. Everybody says we are rubber stamp, we just agree. But if you recall, we beat it down to 10%. It was not in the news, you know. So we are doing our job. You look at the recent debates on the national awards, where we had to call on Mr. President. We did that too in the 9th Assembly when our speaker then, the now Chief of Staff, Right Honorable Femi Gbajabiamila, was given a CFR, the same with the Deputy President of the Senate. In this assembly, we found that happening again. And the same way we reacted then, we reacted. But thank God Mr. President has corrected it. But people will not see that they have been able to speak to the President that this is not right. This is not the proper thing to do. So there are many such debates that goes on the floor. But these are not what Nigerians are expecting. They're expecting a combative situation, a fight going on. But we are looking at what is good for our country, national interest, national development. What can we do to leave this country better than we met it? You know, and for us who are members of the ruling party, our caucus believe that we should engage with the presidency. This issue, how do you want to deal with it? Yesterday somebody was talking about how many budgets we are running. There's this development that happened in this 10th Assembly. A budget amendment was now conceived as supplementary budget. And somebody was talking about several budgets running at the same time. There's a difference. When you amend the 2024 budget, it means that you delete some things that were there and you add some new ones. It's an amendment. But when you do a supplementary, you are doing a whole full-scale addition. You know, Nigerians should be able to understand that. So we did an amendment to the 2024 budget. So if you refer to the 2024 budget today, you will, just like you talk about the 1999 Constitution, you will say as amended. I want us to look at the positive side. There are a lot of negatives. There are many avenues for us to improve, particularly in our oversight. And I'm glad that many of our committee chairmen are ensuring that when we go on oversight these days, the logistics are not provided by the MDAs we go to oversight. And there are a lot of developments. I don't want to be specific to mention names of agencies that have had to get into trouble because of this approach. And you know, in the press, we've had a situation where many agencies have been threatened with being arrested. The Public Accounts Committee, for instance, of the 10th Assembly, has issued orders for many MDAs to refund monies to the Consolidated Revenue Fund of the Federation. That does not make news. But those orders have come to stay. It is now left for the executive to execute them. And that's why we're also proposing in the 10th Assembly an audit tribunal, so that when we finish our job and some agency or an official has been indicted, a probe, an investigative report has come out, the person goes and faces the audit tribunal.
Okay.
That's what we're working on right now,
Beautiful.
to ensure that whatever we come out with from our oversight, we give a bite to it. Otherwise, many of these things are now again left at the mercy of the executive. And this is the challenge we have in Nigeria's democracy. Otherwise, in the United States, for instance, you dare not ignore the summons by Congress. You dare not.
And
then when you appear and you're found guilty, man, you pay for it. People lose their jobs. People face prosecution. People go to detention for that. So the legislature is treated with respect by operatives in the executive. But in Nigeria, we have not seen that happen.
Is it as a result of the relationship between the legislature and the executive that we could not see this kind of thing happen?
No, it's not that relationship. Even if you look at the Obasanjo period, where he was more or less wanting to muzzle the National Assembly, you'll find that heads of ministries, departments, and agencies of government, they responded to the summons of the National. If you don't respond, Mr. President, then he won't take it from you. But then take the 8th Assembly, 9th Assembly. People will not respond and they go on doing their job.
Okay,
People will not be approved for, cleared for offices. They go on doing their job. So,
Sorry,
it's as a result of the failure
can I interject? Sorry,
of
can I
leadership at the executive level.
Can I interject here? You've said so much, and I only hope I can still remember some of the questions I would like to ask you. Regarding the audit, that's very fundamental.
Yes.
I would like you to give us more insight, on what it entails, the content, and when is it becoming a public, issue? When will the public get to know about it? And how does it work? How will it work? That's one. And then I also like you to clarify, when you said that if democracy, doctor said if democracy fails, the National Assembly should be held responsible. But you, of course, didn't agree to that, and you made reference to the involvement of state executives. And I'm asking, democracy is simply listening to the voice of the people, and as leaders, giving them a voice and acting in the best interest of the people. And the best interest of the people is, for instance, they're able to go out to the petrol station, buy fuel. They're able to have 24-hour electricity supply. They're able to travel to and fro, safe, pay school fees,
Security.
infrastructure, and all. Are you now saying it is because the blame should go to just the state executives because they allowed people to come to the National Assembly? Is that what you are saying?
No, the point here.
Are you shifting, the blame now to the state executives only?
Yeah, not only, but executives have a bigger role to play in this. I'll give you an example. We have done the Electricity Act. We have amended the Electricity Act, and now it's no longer on the exclusive list. What have state governments done to catch on to this? Look again at the way state governments have related to their assemblies. In Edo State, for instance, in the last 8 years, has there been a functional state assembly? And this is an act of the executive. Those are the kind of things I'm talking about. Then come to the national. We here in this 10th Assembly, for instance, the House of Representatives, we have passed the Audit Act, or the Audit Bill, as it were, not yet assented. In fact, it's going to the Senate for their consideration and concurrence. Now, that act replaces the Audit Ordinance of 1956. That's for the good of the people. All these kind of things ensures that there's probity in government, and that built on that, that's where the tribunal, the Audit Tribunal, comes up, so that when you are caught by the Audit Act, you face the Audit Tribunal. We are hoping that when this gets to Mr. President...
Is it an act now, or still? You just said it was a bill.
It's a bill at the
Yes,
moment.
so
It's
it
not
has
yet an
not-
act.
yes, it's
when
not
it
yet an
gets to Mr. President, we're expecting that he would give assent immediately, such that this... And the interesting thing about this is that this is even referred to in the Constitution, but in the military era, it was a military tribunal, as it were. So there's a need to give it a legal backing for it to become a civilian thing.
To give it force.
Yes.
Force of law.
Yes, like the Public Accounts Committee in the military area was military and more tied to the executive. But in the Constitution, the Public Accounts Committee, which is the only constitutional committee, is operating from the legislature. So that tribunal that we are working on now, we hope Mr. President will give speedy assent. When that happens...
Is it a private bill or an executive bill, or...?
It's a private bill. It has to be, because we have got this blame that you do all these probes, you do all these audits, nothing come out of it. And we are thinking, what do we do to ensure that after we have found somebody guilty, as it were, you have said return so and so amount of money, and you pass this on to the executive and nothing happens, and people keep blaming you, what can we do? So we are thinking that the best way out of it is to set up a tribunal, specialized tribunal that will deal with such cases, so that when anybody, heads or agents of any of the MDAs, is caught in the act, you face the tribunal and you know that there's consequence for that. But if you think that if it goes to the executive, you are part of the executive, nothing will happen, then the country won't move forward at all. So there's a lot of improvement that will still take place. This example I've given you is one of those that I expected that the media will pick up. And, you know,
but you're just telling us.
No, but our other paper is in the public domain. Our debates are in the public domain. But you will not get this from the media. Take the discussion on the award for the speaker. You know, somebody moved a motion to amend the original motion that we should reject the CFR. And that motion was stepped down. But the next day, the papers went ablaze. House of Reps refused CFR. And that was not the key thing. In fact, that was not the issue.
That's why that's why when we call upon you, you answer, when you come, when you oblige us, you throw more light, and you know people get to know what you're doing. Now the audit bill.
I think he has raised a lot of issues concerning media as
the fourth estate of the realm.
The fourth estate of the realm. Because the way we project, you know, some of these issues as well tells more, you know, to what is happening. It will help to probably change the mentality of Nigerians, because it's what we bring out that Nigerians will react on.
I agree, but I still
yes, because
would like members of the National Assembly to be responsive to press invitations, especially, you know, conversations like this.
You invited me yesterday.
Yes, but you're just one of the few. You're just one of the few.
Just like you said, good news is not always trending. It's only the bad news that trends. Okay, we want to go, but you say you want to. Okay,
yes,
you want to respond.
I want
to
to
some
say
of
that I stand by my words.
Okay.
Yes, for the following reasons. If I know, as a person, as Abdurrahman Abu Amisu, who has a family, who has a business, who drives car, and I take decisions for myself, and that I'm going to something that will compromise me, and I will not be able to act, that I will lose my independence if I contest for an election and I incur millions in debt. I think I would rather keep the few millions I have, not to go in there. And this is the point. Now, when Nigerians are grappling with issues around the economy, and what we are seeing today is a fallout of the implementation of neoliberal economy that is impoverishing the people. And the National Assembly cannot have a public hearing to ask questions, to constitute committee of experts that will assist them. And I said this with all sense of honesty. The legislature is the brake of a car. And once the brake is faulty, be rest assured, however good is the engine, it will not function. Because of some obvious reasons. They are the only institution, and let us be frank with ourselves. Why democracy is because it thrives on peaceful means of addressing issues. And out of all of these peaceful means, election is critical. And who makes the law? For elections? The National Assembly. They are the one that can call INEC, even political parties, to say, look, it is criminal to sell forms for 100 million. To start with.
They are the ones that also make laws.
They are the ones that
get
also make
themselves
laws.
back.
That is it. So now you have the opportunity.
But what you
excuse me,
you
sir.
know, when you make these laws,
yes,
the executive also have to assent.
That is the oversight.
Do you remember
that is another?
In 2015
yes,
and 2019,
yes,
compare the Electoral Acts.
Yes.
This, how many times we went to the president then in 2015
yes,
for it to be signed? Until the elections came, it wasn't signed.
Yes.
So these are the problems
yes, sir.
that you must also look
who
at.
said the president cannot be impeached for trying to sabotage democracy? You know, it has mechanisms.
Is it that easy to impeach the president?
You see, my brother, you see, let us call a spade a spade. There are things that today, if the National Assembly is doing, they will be able to win the confidence of the people. They will be able to mobilize the people. And that is why the alignment of interest comes in. For instance, Nigerians are grappling with a lack of fuel, lack of this, lack of that, no good roads. And then the National Assembly is spending, for instance, 57.6 billion on SUVs. And then you want me to come and join you to fight this is the belief among Nigerians. I have to be honest with you. The belief among Nigerians is this, that the National Assembly only fights whenever their interest is at stake. But once the interest is right, we don't. I said this is the popular belief. And that is why when you people are fighting, and that is why somebody is asking, why are you not fighting? Because if you are fighting, Nigerians will, because they know that they are fighting for the interest of the nation. But if they keep quiet, they believe that, okay, they are not fighting for the interest of the nation, whether it is true or not. Now, the issues are clear. Whether we like it or not, National Assembly, the judiciary, the electoral empires have a critical role to play in terms of sustaining development.
You're right.
And
you're right.
Because
but I take exception to this SUV thing you talked about.
Yes.
Because in the 9th Assembly, for instance,
yes,
we were all given, I had a Camry as my official car, and that's what everybody had. Now, judges, even some top executives, they drive better vehicles.
Yes.
I don't see what is the big deal. When I came from the banking sector, 20 years ago, I already had a brand new Prado from the bank.
Yes.
And nobody, it wasn't on any newspaper page.
Yes.
But then, as a member, honorable member of the House of Representatives, who traveled a lot at the bank, what was I doing? From my house to the bank and back, and that was it. But this time, I had traveled to my constituency and back, and several oversight visits. And with the state of things in this country, I get a Camry in the 9th Assembly, and the country went wild. And then in this assembly, I get a Prado that I started driving 20 years ago. And then everybody makes noise about it.
But,
I think we are, for an academic
yes,
who subscribes to this popularist thought. Because what you taught us in school, general studies in 100 level, is logical thinking.
Yes.
We have a responsibility, those of us. I saw a professor who made a post. Education budget is this. Meanwhile, 469 people are sharing this.
Yes.
A university professor, I gave him a call. You really believe this post you have made on social media? You taught us in school. Is this money being shared by 469 persons? Have you heard of the National Assembly Service Commission? Have you heard of the Nigerian Institute for Legislative and Democratic Studies? Have you heard of the National Assembly Clinic? Have you heard of the bureaucracy of the National Assembly? Do you know that every day millions of naira are spent running the place? So those are the kind of things you think. So you think he now wants to narrow it to say everything is put on a pot and shared among 469.
Okay,
So when an academic person from that background talks in that light, it worries people like me who think that education is a solution to many of the problems we have in the country.
Yes.
Member,
I expect educated people to put
member,
the
please.
things
It is,
better
Member,
on the
please.
table.
Dr. Hamisu, please, let's just take a break.
Yeah.
When we come back, yes, we'll continue because our conversation is on 64 years of Nigerian legislature. And we'll be going to Senator Irat Gwadabe when we come back from this break. All right, welcome back. And you're watching Good Morning Nigeria. Member Francis is still speaking, of course, with Dr.
conversation was still on.
was still on with Dr. Hamisu. But let's go to our Zoom connection where Senator Irat Gwadabe is. Senator, thank you if you're still with us. First, I'm wondering if during your time, that's the fourth National Assembly, if you had a situation where an issue was deadlocked between the legislature and the executive declined to act, act out the legislature's, decisions. That's one. And two, Dr. Hamisu raised an issue about the luxuries enjoyed by the National Assembly members, the lawmakers, and wondered why, they could not extend such luxury to Nigerians by way of even patronizing our own, indigenous manufacturers. And he mentioned the purchase of SUVs and wondered why vehicles and SVU could not have been bought from our own indigenous automobile, manufacturer. Senator Irat, I don't know if you heard my questions. I had two questions and
Yeah.
Okay. Please go ahead if you heard me.
I heard you. The first question that you asked was about the vehicles and if we had issues about it or not. Well, yes, we did. You can still hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. During our time, we had issues, if you recall, of furniture allowances, which was blown out of proportion. But the point is this. There are certain basic things that is necessary for the functioning of the legislature, including the type of things on the
Oh dear.
I think we're having some
yes, we are having network glitches.
I think it's the network issue from where she is.
Senator Irat, I do hope your connection will clear and we will get to share, from your experience and of course how you were able to resolve the deadlock between the executive and the legislature and the other issue, surrounding the luxury enjoyed by the legislatures. But let me ask, member. Professor Mato talked about collaboration and not confrontation. And of course, that the National Assembly is popularly known or publicly known as rubber stamp and all of that. Now, what from your perspective is collaboration and what is confrontation?
Yeah. Let me even define this rubber stamp. There are legislatures around the world, even in Africa, whose business really is to just rubber stamp what the executive is doing because that's the way they are set up. That's what they are set up to do. In Nigeria, it's not exactly the same. But take the Appropriation Act. It must originate from the executive. There are other places where it could originate from the legislature. Now here it originates from the executive. And what you do here is to find justification for whatever provisions that are there. And when something appears all right and you agree with it, if you call that rubber stamp, so be it. But then we must look at the areas where you disagree and say, no, this is not right. We cut the revenue expenditure here, we adjust this there. So when you do that, it's not rubber stamp. So, but I think it's popular to the whipping dog to abuse the National Assembly and give all kinds of appellatives, you know, all kinds of derogatory abuses for the role they play. But then you find that like Doc said, that without the legislature there is no democracy really. And the current National Assembly is doing the best it can, and the fight that Nigerians experienced in the 8th Assembly, I pray it doesn't happen to our country anymore. I pray it doesn't happen again. Collaboration means discussion. It means dialogue. You bring in the budget, you first bring in your MTEF, your fiscal policy paper. We agree on our benchmark and all of that, volume of production. We agree on what we want to see in our country in the next 3-5 years. There must be that meeting point. Then the budget comes. Then you look at the specific provisions and you question them. Then you go on to do the oversight that is necessary. That is collaboration. But where the budget comes and you say, we are not looking at this budget unless Mr. President bows before us. It makes no sense. That is, to me, is playing to the gallery that the former NAS official was talking about via Zoom, you know, and some petty, selfish power tussle between both arms, who is superior. And then when two elephants fight, the grass suffers.
When you screen appointees, what specifically and precisely do you look for? Because there are cases where some nominees, even with some baggages, have passed through your radar.
Now, what happens is this. First, the issue of screening constitutionally is a Senate prerogative. Just like we say that appropriation is the House thing, because by our numbers we can vote them down, and that's why they never want to join sitting, you know. But then, for screening, they are asked to bring in their copies of their credentials, as elaborate as they can make it, and that is sent ahead for study by each member of the relevant committee. Then they make their own input in terms of what they think, their own recommendations. Questions they want to ask. All this happened before the nominee appears before the committee. What most people see is the television show. But before that, these papers have been sent in, they've been scrutinized, the Security Service have been asked to make their comments, their backgrounds check have been done. So you get some of them that are clean and good to go. So what you want to ask such is what they want to do for the country going forward. But then if you have those who have just left service, maybe a senator who is just left service, you don't really have a lot to do in that camera cover, that news coverage time, you know. But these kind of checks take place before the public engagement.
I've almost forgotten to...
Yes, I wanted to call your attention to that. Let's go to Jos now, where we still have Dr. Uchigbo. And Dr. Uchigbo, I also want you to speak to this issue of collaboration between the executive and the legislature. I mean, how do you think they can work better, for the betterment of, of the country? And the issue of these oversight functions that keep coming up, and what do you think? How do you think the legislature actually can improve on their oversight function and for the betterment of, the whole country?
Thank you very much. Yes, let me restate that the National Assembly or the Legislature, and I think we are all agreed on this, represents, whatever democracy is in the life of any country. It is the scepter, it is the totem, if you like. It is the crown hair of democracy. And there's nothing like it. And by the way, there's nothing like a bad legislature, but perhaps there could be someone bad in a legislature, and we must clarify that. Like Honorable Ejirogene said, and I agree, there are quite several very honorable people, people of worth in the National Assembly. And there are problems. Some of them came, hoping on the wrong information. And I personally encountered this. I've seen members who told me, said, well, before we came here, we were told that after every committee meeting, this is what should be there. Why are we seeing a different thing? And like he rightly said, yes, and they confessed. We came under that impression. But what we are seeing here at the committee meeting is the chairman and the clerk just telling stories and grammar and giving us pieces of paper. So that is wrong information. And by the way, before I forget, I think the challenge also is that the information machinery of the National Assembly should be well overhauled to liaise with journalists. We have a whole committee on information. And it's not just about waiting for heated moments to start talking. There are issues of education that we must take the public through. And I said it, I think, at one time here. There's so much misinformation about the budgeting process, and people will not know. You call white black, you call black white. And because the National Assembly will always be the whipping, if you say anything that is like, you say, no, you are trying to support, but it's not that. So, coming to the issue of oversight specifically, let me say that of all the roles and the functions of the average lawmaker, perhaps none is as telling. There is none that is, riddled with so much issues, if you see it. It's like a traffic gridlock there, like the issue of oversight. And that is where we must acquit ourselves very, very properly. Now, what is an efficient and effective legislature? An efficient and effective, we use the word effective, but I want to add, say management scientist, I want to add the word efficient. You don't just need to be effective, be efficient also. An effective, efficient legislature is one that delivers on bills to the point of assent and follow up, like I said yesterday, aka oversight. And if you must do this oversight well, like they say, respect begets respect. And I'm happy the member said that a lot is improving right there, because and I think we are all agreed on this too, the agencies are out there. He who pays the piper dictates the tune. You go to an agency, the agency bankrolls you, transports you, gives you ticket or whatever. Assuming, that is what is going on, then what have you come to oversight again? And you forget that the same people that you collaborate with in some way to do all this, they talk and in the public space there. So ab initio, you've rendered yourself totally ineffective, the fact that you have gone to do this. So I think that as a corporate institution, and even in the individual capacity of members and lawmakers, we all have to come to a system whereby, or to a place whereby we must rejig ourselves. Now, again, I come back to the point. Yes, very, very sound people in the National Assembly. For instance, look at the Senate. It's becoming a political model now in Nigeria, that you finish your tenure as a governor, you go back to the Senate. And if anyone doesn't come at all, it's either because he was defeated or something went wrong. Now, that, if you ask me, I don't have issues with that. Let's get the best people. If it's governors who want to vote former governors to be in the Senate, let them be there. But it means that they must add value in very, very measurable and verifiable ways to this democracy, to this legislative democracy. But if all they will do there is an assembly ground, an alumni association of old boys or old girls, then that is where I think Nigerians will be worried. But the fact that we have brought a governor who has the experience, who has gone through a lot to add to the betterment of the nation, I think that is where we should be. So it means that if we must make progress, let the National Assembly rejig itself.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Abel Daniel. Thank you. The time again is beckoning. Let me go back to Senator Irat Gwadebe. Senator, you may wish to take the question and then maybe speak again on the issue of what do you call it again? Constitutional projects. And I'm just wondering, like some of my colleagues are also, with all the abandoned projects, you go to the communities, you see maybe it's one tank overhead, you know, it was a constitutional project, it's abandoned, constituency project, I beg your pardon, you know, it's abandoned and all that. I don't know, is this still relevant?
Extremely. The term constituency project was brought in in the Fourth Assembly. We took the ideas from some other legislatures. Now, the idea is this, not people misunderstand it. Each department of government, ministries, have their respective budget for a year. Am I still on? Hello?
You are?
Yeah, they have their budget for the year. And in drafting that budget, I'll break it down for you now. Let's say the Ministry of Water Resources decides the part of their budget that year is going to be to provide boreholes rather than major reticulation. Now, in providing that borehole, then it will be that opportunities will come up where the National Assembly could have the legislative input as to the location of those boreholes. And that's what is referred to as constituency projects. It is the executive that provides the location, and they are the ones that will execute it. However, the collaboration is that the National Assembly member will identify the location where it will be located. And as a result, it is that ministry that should have oversight to ensure that those projects are done and they are functioning. Now, where the breakdown occurs is there's sometimes very little link between the legislature and the constituency plus the ministry. If in a community, a borehole that was brought in may be under the name of that particular lawmaker, National Assembly member, the committee should be set up in that location to monitor the functionality of the project and report to that legislature when it breaks down, so that they can now inform the respective executive sector, which is the ministry, to go and fix it. But so where you see breakdown, that's what occurs, lack of going back and forth and regulating all these are government projects, not necessarily that legislator's project. The only thing the legislator is supposed to do is nominate the location where that project will be done. However, the deadlock that you see will be when the oversight function is being performed by the National Assembly itself. And they push those recommendations. Sometimes the executive does not respond positively to execute this project. And I'm happy that the audit tribunal is going to be in place soon. It is for the benefit of all of us Nigerians. And when it comes to the public misunderstand legislative projects, because the misinformation is that the money is given to the honorable member and he now comes and he puts it there. No, the funds are not necessarily given to them. And that is the idea that government, being in the legislative arm, it's not, you're not executing anything. So how can you attract as much federal presence to your constituency? It's a struggle to get that done.
Well, thank you very much, Senator. We have to cut you short here because of our time is well spent. So we just want to thank you very much for your contribution on today's discussion. I'm talking about Senator Kairat Gwadabe. She was Senator in the Fourth Republic, Fourth National Assembly. Thank you so much, Senator, for coming on Good Morning Nigeria.
Thank you.
Thank you. Also, let me just thank Dr. Hamisu, Abdurrahman Abu Amisu, political scientist and public affairs analyst. Thank you so much for your contribution this morning.
Thank you for having me.
And Honorable Waive, thank you, Chairman, House of Representative Committee on Rules and Business and member represented Ugweli North and South Udi Federal Constituency. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
All right, so we hear more from you. I also want to thank Dr. Abel Daniel Ochigbo, former Deputy Clerk, Administration, House of Representatives, National Assembly, and President, CEO, Creativity Management Consultant. Thank you so much, Dr. Ochigbo, for joining us yesterday and also today. Thank you for your contribution.
Thank you so much.
All right, indeed, we'd like to say thank you to everyone who's joined us for this conversation. Today's conversation has been very robust, but it hasn't ended yet. We'll find time again to revisit this topic. And I'm Claire Adelabu Abdulrazak. Bye-bye.
All right, I'm Ademola Adeoye. Thanks for joining us. Have a wonderful day.